This is Lviv, June 23rd. The book is called The Shield of Europe, Notes from Ukraine. And this chapter is called The Defenders of the Azovstal Steelworks and the Battle for Mariupol, which I first wrote on May 21st in Kharkiv, and then I've updated it in the last few days here in Lviv. The Defenders of the Azovstal Steelworks and the Battle for Mariupol. Anyone who cares about Ukraine, who's been following this conflict and the triumphs and setbacks Ukraine has experienced since late February, couldn't look on other than with tremendous sadness as the exhausted and often wounded surviving Ukrainian defenders were toted off to Russia in buses. Fewer than 1,000 Ukrainian fighters, with no or very little supporting armor or air support, had held out for more than 80 days against more than 10 times that many Russian invaders, the Russians with all of their weaponry, heavy armor, air support, missile and artillery bases just over the border, with so far unconfirmed use of chemical weapons. For most of that time, the Ukrainian defenders could not or could barely get resupplied. For weeks it was suggested that they were hours from complete collapse, from capitulation, and still, day after day, they fought on. Some 240 have now been evacuated under Russian custody, most of these wounded, in theory to be exchanged for Russian POWs. But it's impossible to consider without suspicion any such agreement, or to believe Putin can be trusted to comply with it. After that final evacuation, other Ukrainians remained and fought on in circumstances so desperately heroic as will be recalled for as long as there is something called human history, for as long as people recall the exploits of previous generations. This is their Alamo, their Bastion. It is believed or thought that these Azovstal defenders did in something like 2,000 Russian invaders and held down perhaps 10,000 Russian troops, something like a full division, kept these Russian troops from joining the battle elsewhere on the front. The siege of Bastion during the Battle of the Bulge in late 1944 lasted about 11 days, until Patton's forces and tanks broke through and rescued the Americans trapped there. The Azovstal defenders fought continuously for going on 3 months, most of that time cut off from reinforcements and most resupplies. And unlike the American defenders at Bastion, the Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol knew that there would be no column of armor and infantry breaking through any time soon to relieve and release them from the siege. Any such attempt from Ukrainian-held territory further north would itself have been a suicide mission. The battle known to Americans as the Alamo, during which American defenders of the fort were ultimately defeated and killed to the last man, lasted 2 weeks and is recalled still as a symbol of defiant resistance and resilience. That lost battle rallied the young American nation to final victory. Call to mind other such desperately heroic stands throughout history. Choose any time, any era, any place on the globe. This stand of the Ukrainian Azov Regiment, this refusal to budge, to surrender or evacuate, ranks with any that might be recalled. As of mid-June, it is known that the Russians will not be releasing the remaining Azov fighters back to Ukraine, that their fate may or will be to be tried as war criminals inside Russia. This would be a final indignity, but their martyrdom would then be complete. No one knows under what conditions they're being kept and how they're being treated. Their Russian accusers and murderers will be swept aside and forgotten. These men and their heroism will be remembered as long as there is a nation of Ukraine and as long as there are free nations and free people anywhere. Ukraine, June 23rd. Slava Ukraine.